Have you ever wondered why Japan, a country known for its peaceful culture and artistry, played such an aggressive role in World War II? A question that has intrigued historians and enthusiasts alike. This video will seek to shed light on this paradox by delving deep into the annals of history. We'll explore Japan's motivations for entering the war, the strategic battles it engaged in, and the devastating aftermath that forever changed its landscape. From the rise of militarism to the infamous surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, to the fierce battles across the Pacific and the eventual atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, we'll unravel the series of events that led Japan down this turbulent path. We'll also delve into the profound impact this war had on the Japanese populace, and how it shaped the nation's post-war identity. Join us as we embark on a journey back in time to uncover the realities of Japan's involvement in World War II. In the late 1930s, Japan, driven by imperial ambitions and the desire for resources, started its course towards the global conflict. The land of the rising sun, as it was often called, was not content with its place on the world stage. It yearned for more power, more resources, and more territory. Japan's first major act of expansion was the invasion of China in 1937. This invasion was a brutal affair, marked by atrocities such as the infamous Nanking Massacre. It was a clear display of Japan's military might and its willingness to use it to further its imperial ambitions. But it was also the beginning of a long and bloody conflict that would last for 8 years. While Japan was extending its empire in Asia, it was also creating tensions with Western powers. The United States and its allies had significant interests in the region, and they were not about to let Japan's aggression go unchecked. Economic sanctions and diplomatic protests were launched, but these efforts did little to deter Japan. As the situation escalated, Japan was faced with a choice: back down from its expansionist agenda, or double down, and face potential war with the Western powers. For the Japanese leadership, the choice was clear: they would not be dissuaded from their path. This decision culminated in the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. It was a daring and audacious move designed to cripple the United States Pacific Fleet and buy Japan the time it needed to secure its empire. But it was also a gamble that would have far-reaching consequences. With the attack on Pearl Harbor, Japan had not only declared war on the United States, but had also set the stage for some of the most brutal battles of the 20th century. The rising sun was now fully engaged in World War II, and the world would never be the same. Once engaged in the war, Japan's strategic focus was the Pacific. The vast oceanic expanse was seen as a buffer, protecting the Japanese heartland from potential enemies. Their plan was to create a defensive perimeter, a vast fortress of islands, stretching from the Aleutians in the north to the Gilberts in the south, and from Burma in the west to Midway in the east. This strategy was underpinned by a belief in the indomitable spirit of the Japanese warrior, the Bushido Code, and the assumption that the United States, still reeling from the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, would be unwilling to pay the high price of breaching this perimeter. Initially, things went well for Japan. Their forces swept through the Pacific, capturing key territories like the Philippines, Guam, and Wake Island. Their rapid advance, characterized by surprise attacks and ruthless efficiency, left Allied forces reeling. But the tide of war is fickle. The turning point came at a small atoll in the middle of the Pacific, the Battle of Midway. In early June of 1942, a daring plan by the American Admiral Nimitz resulted in a decisive victory for the United States. In the span of a few days, the Japanese lost 4 of their frontline aircraft carriers, a devastating blow from which they never fully recovered. The Battle of Midway shattered the myth of Japanese invincibility. It breached Japan's defensive perimeter, exposing the vulnerabilities in their strategy and marking the beginning of a relentless American advance across the Pacific. However, it wasn't just the physical losses that stung. The psychological impact was equally significant. Japan's military leaders had promised a quick, victorious war. Now they faced the daunting prospect of a long, drawn-out conflict against an enemy who had demonstrated both the will and the capability to fight back. The Battle of Midway marked a significant shift, with Japan's defensive perimeter breached and its navy severely weakened. It was a moment that changed the course of the Pacific War, setting in motion a series of events that would ultimately lead to Japan's surrender in 1945. By 1945, Japan was on the back foot. yet it refused to surrender. The once formidable empire was now facing insurmountable odds, with the Allied powers closing in. The tide had turned and Japan found itself isolated and outmatched. But still, it clung to the hope of a favorable outcome. In August of that same year, the world witnessed a horrifying spectacle that would change the course of history forever. The United States, in a bid to hasten the end of the war, dropped 2 atomic bombs on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It was a display of raw, unbridled power, the likes of which had never been seen before. The bombings resulted in the immediate deaths of over 100,000 people, the majority of whom were civilians. The fallout was equally devastating, causing long-term health effects and environmental damage. Yet the bombings were not the only factor that precipitated Japan's surrender. On the heels of this unprecedented devastation, another blow was dealt. The Soviet Union, previously neutral in the Pacific conflict, declared war on Japan. This was a significant turning point. Japan, already reeling from the atomic bombings, was now confronted with the prospect of a two-front war it could not possibly win. These events served as a wake-up call to the Japanese leadership. The cost of continuing the war was far too high, and the possibility of victory was virtually non-existent. The choice was clear, and it was a bitter pill to swallow. On August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito, in a radio broadcast now known as the Jewel Voice broadcast, announced Japan's surrender. It was the first time the Japanese public had heard their emperor's voice. Hirohito never explicitly used the word surrender, instead stating that the government had accepted the provisions of the Potsdam Declaration. This marked the end of World War II and the beginning of a new era for Japan. The land of the rising sun was now faced with the daunting task of rebuilding and reinventing itself from the ashes of war. On August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's surrender, marking the end of World War II. The end of the war was just the beginning of a new chapter for Japan. Indeed, the conclusion of the Second World War did not signify an abrupt end to Japan's struggles. It signaled the onset of a tumultuous period of change, reconstruction, and ultimately, rebirth. The country, devastated by the ravages of war, was now faced with the daunting task of rebuilding their shattered nation. The initial aftermath was marked by a period of occupation by Allied forces, primarily led by the United States. This was the first and only time in Japan's history that the nation was occupied by a foreign power. The occupation, which lasted for 7 years from September 1945 to April 1952, was a time of significant political and social change. One of the most noteworthy changes during this time was the drafting of a new constitution. Known as the Post-War Constitution or the Constitution of Japan, it was an innovative document that dramatically altered Japan's governmental structure. It established Japan as a constitutional monarchy with a parliamentary government, a stark departure from the previous imperial rule. But perhaps the most significant aspect of this constitution was Article 9, often referred to as the Peace Clause. In a profound break from its militaristic past, Japan renounced war as a sovereign right and vowed to never maintain military forces for the purpose of aggression. This clause, still in effect today, has shaped Japan's role on the global stage, making it a nation committed to peace and diplomacy. The post-war years were also marked by an incredible period of economic recovery and growth. Despite the widespread devastation, Japan managed to rise from the ashes like a phoenix. The country embarked on a journey of economic revitalization, transforming itself into a global industrial and technological powerhouse in just a few short decades. This economic miracle was no small feat. It was a testament to the indomitable spirit of the Japanese people, their resilience, and their determination. It was a result of their ability to adapt, innovate, and persevere in the face of adversity. The war had been a time of immense suffering and loss for Japan, but it also served as a catalyst for change, prompting a period of self-reflection and reform. It forced the nation to confront and redefine its identity, leading to the birth of the Japan we know today. A nation characterized by its blend of tradition and modernity, its commitment to peace, and its status as an economic titan. In conclusion, the aftermath of World War II was a pivotal period in Japan's history. It was a time of transformation and renewal, a time of challenges and triumphs. The scars of the war are indelibly etched in the country's collective memory, serving as a reminder of its past and a symbol of its resilience. From the ashes of World War II, Japan rose to become one of the world's leading economic powers, a testament to the resilience and determination of its people.